late night Tuesday loss in Game 5 to the Denver Nuggets, and we're going to get right into this thing. It was I should say, I'm filling in for Sam Ekstrom, of course. I'm Ben Beecken, the host of the Lockdown Wolves podcast. We'll go around. Everybody will introduce themselves. We'll get into the key takeaways from Game 5 in Denver and what might need to happen as we look ahead to Game 6. Let's go ahead and get started with our opening tip.
I'm Jack Borman, editor-in-chief at Canis Hoopus, co-host of the Lockdown Wolves postcast with Luke Inman. And I'm going to eat some crow today. It has to happen with what's happened since the last time we convened here.
I'm Reggie Wilson, sports director at Care 11, and the vibes are high right now in Denver, reporting live from Denver. But, not necessarily just high for the Nuggets. The vibes are still intact for the Wolves, too, surprisingly.
Sorry. Oh, shoot.
We got you there,
and
Ron.
I'm fixing my camera because my power thing is off. But I'm Ron Johnson, and I just want to make sure we talk about slow-mo. I got to talk about him. I got to talk about his lack of, and the fact that the Timberwolves need Mike Conley.
Yeah, Mike Conley not playing in Game 5 was obviously a huge storyline that, like, because of how Nikola Jokic played, it's easy to forget that Mike Conley didn't play, and the Wolves' offense was every bit as much of a problem. This game was there for the taking for Minnesota, at least in the sense that they had a terrible first half and still only trailed by 6 at halftime. They were down, I think, 2 at the end of the first quarter. Ant hadn't gotten going at any point. Cat tweaked his knee. Like, there were a lot of things not going the Wolves' way. And yet they were still right in the game at halftime before Nikola Jokic went crazy. Reggie, you were in the building, and we'll start with you. What are your initial takeaways? Is it Joker? Is it anything Wolves related? What's your first kind of reaction to this game?
Yeah, so it was weird because, like, the game just had like a feeling of desperation, like, right away. And you could see that this game meant a lot to both teams. But what was tough was it just didn't come together. Like, the Wolves never really got into an offensive flow and into a rhythm. And the crowd was into it. And any little thing the Nuggets did, it was just downhill, it felt like. And some of the leads, it's what, 6 at one point, and it felt like double digits. And that was the tough part yesterday. And every time Ant got the ball, he was doubled. And he was able to, pass out of a lot of those situations, but he also had some turnovers in those situations as well. And it was really tough. After the game, he said that was the most attention that he's probably ever gotten in his life. And they made it really difficult for him. But Jokic did what he did. And it was incredible to watch. It just seemed like anybody that was guarding him was barbecue chicken. And that third quarter was just special. And the Wolves just really had no answer. It seemed like whenever they tried to get into a rhythm or try to get a run going, which Kat mentioned, it happened so many times. They were down 6, 8, 10 points against the Suns, and they were able to weather that and make a run. But every time they tried to make a run, and that seemed to be the case, not just last game, but the last 3 games, every time they tried to make a run, the Nuggets came back. It was a transition bucket. It was a terrible possession. They had 14 turnovers last night, and that just seemed to put like the nail in the coffin a bit, because it was sloppy play. It was some low IQ basketball going on out there as well. Just some bad possessions. They really missed Mike Conley out there, just kind of situating everything for them. That was a really huge loss for them when they announced that he wasn't going to play. He went through warmups and just couldn't give it a go. And so now they're in this situation where they're facing elimination. And, a lot of them were talking about, hey, we still feel like we'll be back here for Game 7. It's like they say that, and the vibes were not, downtrodden. They didn't seem to be down on themselves. They seem to still be, energized about the possibility to win in Game 6. But it kind of feels like this thing might be over.
Yeah, and it's funny, like the last time that there were vibes like this, like I know the Wolves lost the last 2 games and it wasn't great, but there was still kind of this, all right, they won both games in Denver. There it seemed like at least coming out of game 4, there were still some positives. Ant had the massive game. So it's like, all right, well, if Ant puts the team on his back in Denver in game 5, they'll be fine. The last time we had vibes like this was game 82 when the Wolves were blown out by the Suns. We had basically a whole week to wring our hands about what's going to happen in the playoffs. And then of course the Wolves were going back to Target Center. They were going to be at home, and they actually got out to a slow start in game 1 against Phoenix too. Now, obviously, to your point, the runs they made against Phoenix, that's a different story. Phoenix and Denver are not the same. They're not even close. And Denver had timely timeouts. They kind of stymied every run the Wolves went on in this game. So it's clearly a different caliber opponent, but still, the Wolves, this is the first time all year Timberwolves have lost 3 games in a row, and it comes at obviously the most important time of the year too. Jack, your take on your initial takeaways on this one.
Yeah, I have to issue an apology to the Denver Nuggets. I said I put a time of death out on the Denver Nuggets in the second quarter of game 2. Boy, oh boy, have they resurrected and put together a heck of a 3-game run here. And I mean, all of it has been because of Jokic for the most part. Just the way that he has made this defense, I think, just kind of abandon all the principles that have made them one of the NBA's all-time great defenses. And it's just amazing what can happen when you have a player that's capable of making any type of tough shot, makes you pay for any type of defensive mistake you make, whether it's on the ball, off the ball. Once the shot goes up, is capable of getting just about any type of offensive rebound, which is using his strength to pin guys underneath the rim. Yeah, I mean, he just completely took over the game and made the defense, really start kind of panicking, and you could just kind of see the wheels spinning with all these guys in their heads of, what can we try to do? And Karl Anthony Towns said after the game last night that the Wolves just haven't had good defensive game plan, execution, and that guys haven't been sticking to the game plan. And it's easy to see why, right? When, he's just had an answer for absolutely everything. But yeah, I mean, I also think another big issue in this game was the second quarter. The Timberwolves had 8 turnovers and 8 made shots in that quarter. 8 guys played and 7 of them had a turnover. So only Monte Morris was the only guy who did not have a turnover. And it just really felt like when Karl Anthony Towns picked up his 3rd foul and missed the last, 5:14 of the half, that was a really big missed opportunity for the Timberwolves, because Karl was playing really, really well, and the 3rd foul just came in, really dumb fashion, and you absolutely just didn't need it in that moment. And I thought that, when you think about the fact that, the Wolves were getting stops in the second quarter too, they just weren't able to capitalize on what was going on. And, the Wolves lost the final 5:14 of that half that he sat by 2. And it really felt like if he was on the floor during that stretch, that the Timberwolves could have won by 4, 5, 6, 7 points. And then, when you have that run, so instead of being down 6 at half, maybe it's a tie game or you're up 1 or 2. And then if you're able to kind of sustain that and have that early third quarter run, maybe you're looking at an 8-10 point lead rather than a 2-point lead that they clawed back to. But man, when Jokic got it going, and then towards the end of that third quarter, I think Denver scored 10 consecutive trips down the floor. You just don't have any answers for it. And it's, it's kind of broken the Timberwolves spirit defensively. And, we'll see how the Wolves respond. But, I think a lot of this just kind of rests on the fact that Nikola Jokic is making some really, really tough shots. And Rudy Gobert certainly, got cooked online. And there were certainly some possessions where he didn't have his best stuff. But man, Nikola Jokic made some crazy difficult shots when Rudy or Cat or Nas or Slow-Mo were playing pretty perfect defense. And, when that's happening, all you can do sometimes is just laugh. And there were certainly some helpless laughs over here watching Nikola Jokic, but all the credit to him and the Nuggets for the way that they've banded together, because, they looked really emotionally disconnected after game 2, and they've certainly found it these last 3 games.
Yeah, I mean, the headline is Nikola Jokic, right? I mean, to have 40 points efficiently and also have 13 assists and no turnovers. Jack and I talked about this on the postcast last night, but the prevailing wisdom is like, hey, make Joker score. The Wolves have said that. Like Micah Nori has said that publicly. Like, hey, we want Jokic to shoot more shots to try and limit his playmaking ability, getting others involved. But when he's able to do both of those things and not turn the ball over, then it's going to be impossible to beat a team like this. Jack, you mentioned the second quarter, the rotation, some of the guys that were on the floor. Ron, you wanted to talk about slow-mo. Now's as good a time as any. I certainly think, I don't know that, you look at the box score, you wouldn't have known that slow-mo didn't have a great game, and it wasn't as horrific looking as his game 4 box score line was. But the eye test would tell you that Kyle Anderson did not have his best game in a Timberwolves uniform. What's your slow-mo take here on this Wednesday?
Oh, sorry. So the way I look at it is it's just the way the game looks when he's in the game. Like they're throwing balls down the court. He's not able to catch up to him. He catches up to him. He throws an errant pass. He's dribbling down. Nobody's covering him. Wide open at the free throw line. He doesn't have the confidence or the speed to get the shot up before he thinks he's going to get blocked because of his shooting motion and his mechanics. It personally to me just looks like a guy that you're at sometimes is 5-on-4 on offense, where they're leaving him to say, take that shot. Like you're with us. Like you're one of us. And that's how the Nuggets are treating him. And it just sucks that Mike Conley, because you can't do that to Mike Conley. You can't leave Mike Conley at the free throw line by himself. You can't leave him at the 3-point line by himself. And so because Jokic was able to say, okay, I'll guard him. You guys all move around. Aaron Gordon, you go guard Cat. Gobert, who cares who guards you? You're going to look like trash because I'm going to show you you're the defensive player of the year. Like it reminded me of Black Panther, when Michael B. Jordan finally beats up T'Challa and he's like, is this your king? Like, is this is who y'all thought was the guy? And every chance they got, they win it Gobert. And so the way, I don't know if there is an answer besides Mike Conley. Somebody has to ice that Achilles down and he just has to, I've been there. I know what that feels like, because when you're older playing basketball numerous nights, it does get sore, and then it's scary because you're nervous, as sore as it is, that you're not going to move as fast and you don't want to pop it. And so he's in that weird position now of like, well, how hard can I push it? Am I going to hurt my team by being out here? But slow-mo to me, I don't really care. Like when I look at the numbers and the stats, and you can say, out of the 16 minutes he get, well, no, this is the wrong game. When you look at where he's at with the play, wait, no, is this the right game? Because when Kyle Anderson, am I on the wrong one? The 2 points?
No, you got it. He played 16 minutes. Yeah. He played game before. He only played like 9 minutes, I believe.
So, you had me thinking he had more points than 2. Like, I'm like, yeah. You're like, you look at the stat line and it looks okay. What looks okay about that?
Last game, he turned it over more often. He missed more shots. Like this game, he at least, like, you're right. I mean, he only had 2 points.
He was a negative 18 in 6
like
minutes.
When you said it was okay, I'm like, well, shoot, am I looking at the wrong stats? Like, what stat book did I get? No, this is horrible. 16 minutes and 2 points. Like, I can get you 16 minutes and 4 points. I promise you that in the NBA. Like, if you put me in the NBA finals, I promise you, if y'all leave me open at the free throw line extended, I'm going to hit that shot. Like, you're not going to be able to just leave me uncovered, Joker. Like, I don't care. You're not. And again, I'm quicker than slow-mo. Like, I know I am. So this whole NFL, NBA thing, y'all talking about Deron Williams beat up Frank Gore. Who cares? Look at slow-mo. No. There's definitely some players in the NBA. Justin Jefferson could have given them more points than slow-mo and helped them on the fast breaks. He could have probably not thrown the ball. I mean, again, he's like, I wouldn't call them turnovers, but they were kind of turnovers because of his speed. Like if you watch him, he's the catalyst for some of these turnovers because he's not able to get to the ball, or he's just making a dumb pass, or it's a loose ball and he doesn't go for it because he's like, oh, I'm not fast enough to get it. I'm going to just let this other guy for the Nuggets get it, and he's going to start a break, and then Aaron Gordon's down there. I posed a question to Sam, and I said, would you guys trade Aaron Gordon for Cat if you can get some extra pieces with Aaron Gordon? Sam says no because of Cat's production and how good Aaron Gordon is an energy guy, and he gives you a ton off the bench, and he's not eating up a lot of salary. That's the only thing. Like Cat, to me, last night, made a lot of dumb plays. It's like when you tell a little kid, don't put your finger in that outlet or don't touch the stove because it's hot. Stop reaching. Like, why are you reaching for Gobert if it's backs to the basket? You're not gonna do this 7 feet with a 7'4" wingspan. You're not gonna poke the ball out. Like, and that to me just feels dumb. Like, just stand up, let him decide. You put a little bit of body on him. And then after you put body on him, don't overplay, because he's just waiting for you to give him too much body, and then he's gonna go the other way. So you got to let him go so you can then dictate the defense versus you trying to like attack him. And his mind right now, he's like Neo. He like Anthony Edwards was in the Matrix the first 2 games. Now Jokic was in the Matrix. He was moving at a different speed mentally, even though it looked super slow. He was moving at a different speed than those guys. And it's a slow speed, but he was figuring it out.
Yeah, and I mean, Slow-Mo played more minutes. In my mind, like, it was a combination of foul trouble and obviously no Mike Conley, right? So you need more playmaking on the floor. So I think that was certainly why he played a little bit more in this game. But also, as tough of a series as it is for Slow-Mo to be productive in, like, he was really good in game 2 and Rudy was off the floor. You need another big body, but they're in this weird, and it's another thing Jack and I talked about on the postcast, is like they need size to play against Denver, and they also need shooting, and Slow-Mo provides some of the size, but none of the shooting. And the offense was just never in a flow in this game. And Slow-Mo was certainly part of that. I want to talk about Anthony Edwards and how the Nuggets guarded him in this game and other adjustments throughout the series. We'll do that here next. Today's episode of the Minnesota Basketball Party is sponsored by BetterHelp. We all carry around different stressors, big and small. When we keep them bottled up, it can start to affect us negatively. Therapy is a safe space to get things off your chest, to figure out how to work through whatever's weighing you down. And the Timberwolves 3-2 series deficit may seem minor, but I mean, hey, different things affect different people in different ways. And I mean, that's one of the things that's bothering all of us right now, is the way Minnesota looked in game 5 in Denver and game 4 in Minnesota and game 3 in Minnesota, for that matter. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Get it off your chest with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, let's go ahead and get into, let's see, here we go. We got Ron. All right, let's go ahead and get into some of the adjustments here that were made throughout the series. And one of the biggest ones, I mean, the one that I had wanted to talk about, like that I had kind of teed up before this game, was Denver's offense and how they were bringing the ball up the floor with Aaron Gordon, which, you know, saves some wear and tear in Jamal Murray. It allows them to try and force the switch where Rudy cannot guard Aaron Gordon and therefore, you know, roam and kind of play free safety. Instead, you know, one of the bigger adjustments to me, and really we saw this over the last couple of games, but especially, I mean, Ant dropped, 40 plus last time out. And in this game, Denver was loading up on him in a way that was in some ways almost like what Phoenix was doing, where they were putting two on the ball, even on the catch on the perimeter, and really trying to impact the way that the Wolves offense was running and get the ball out of Ant's hands. But early in the game, he made some good decisions, but those decisions were kind of, I thought his decision-making eroded over the course of the game. Jack, you could take this on the Ant angle on how the Nuggets guarded Ant and Ant's production overall in this game, or any other adjustment that you thought was significant in game 5. Yeah, either way.
Yeah, I think for Ant, they really forced him to go east-west. I thought that Jokic did a great job of when he switched out into not switched out, but when he was up at the level of the screen, and then they had the two guys out there in that blitz coverage, that he did a great job forcing Ant to go east-west and make it a lot more tiresome for him to try to get downhill into the paint. And then, for Ant, I think that, you kind of talked about it, that his playmaking eroded over the course of the game, just because you kind of felt that he wanted to make an imprint as a scorer, and the Nuggets just weren't necessarily letting him do that. And when you have Slow-Mo out there and you have Gobert out there, those are two of the four guys that you have behind the play that aren't, doing a whole lot with the ball in terms of creating spacing and making it easier for their teammates to attack, the backside of a defense in a 4-on-3. And I thought that the Nuggets dared the Timberwolves to, get the ball to Anthony Edwards' hands and have those 4 Timberwolves beat the 3 Nuggets on the backside. And the Timberwolves just couldn't do it consistently enough. And Anthony Edwards too also just didn't get rid of the ball soon enough. I thought he did kind of a lot of running around, kind of almost looked like he was playing tag, and that he was, trying to run around in the perimeter without these two guys catching him, and didn't get rid of the ball as early as he did in that Phoenix series, which I think was a big reason why, the guys around him weren't able to get downhill quite as easily, and it bought the Nuggets more time to rotate behind the play. And so I think, Ant not being able to hit his 3-point shot too was a big factor in that. I think Ant here was only 1 of 5 from 3, and I think if he would have made 3 or 4 threes, being able to shoot a little bit over the top of that, I thought that would have been important. And then the other adjustment too is that what happened a lot of times is you had Nikola Jokic with the ball up top, and Cat was guarding him. And you had Aaron Gordon come and set a ton of 4 or 5 screens up above the perimeter to force switches onto Rudy Gobert. And when that was happening, I mean, we all saw it. I mean, Joker just kind of walked him down below the free throw line, and then was thrown up. Sometimes it was crazy shots. Sometimes it was great footwork that created wide open shots. And a lot of times it just put Rudy in a position to either have to hack or a help defender to have to hack. And it was just unfortunate that the Timberwolves continued to switch those screens. There were a couple possessions where Karl-Anthony Towns was able to fight over that screen and stay connected to Jokic, which is something that we haven't seen a whole lot from anybody on this Timberwolves team. So for Karl to do it, fighting over an Aaron Gordon screen, defending Jokic was really important. But yeah, it just felt like those two things kind of decided the game for these two teams, that the Wolves weren't able to quite figure out. Ant getting off the ball soon enough, and then the guys behind him beating the Nuggets in 4-on-3s, and then they just didn't have an answer for Jokic when they ran that 5-4 pick and roll with with Jokic and Gordon, and they just kept switching that over and over and over again, and it was just the same result. So if the Timberwolves can figure out a way to to combat that 5-4 pick and roll, maybe it's having another guy right there that can help and force the ball out of Joker's hands before he's able to walk Rudy down into the paint. That's something that I would keep an eye on in Game 6. But again, it's just a situation where when you get somebody that's as big as Joker is, and is as fluid as he is, and can get down there, without having to just, really throw his shoulder into somebody, it's just a huge mismatch problem. And at some point you can't fight the genes that Jokic has and that Gobert has. I mean, for someone who's built the way Gobert is, he's about as strong as you can possibly be in that body. And it's just, it's an unfortunate competitive advantage that the Wolves are going to have to overcome here in the next, whether it's Game 6 or the next 2 games here.
Yeah, screen navigation is something the Wolves are generally so good at, and it wasn't great early in this series with Jamal Murray, or I shouldn't say early in the last couple of games with Jamal Murray, and then just putting bigs in pick and rolls over and over. It's just, and Jokic is such a good screen setter, sometimes an illegal screen setter, but he's so good at it. And the Wolves just, to your point, didn't do a great job covering that in this game. Reggie, what was your take on Ant's performance in Game 5?
Man, it was tough. I felt like he really wanted to get going, but the Nuggets made their decision. Like, look, Ant is not going to beat us. And that was a sound decision, because it seems like headed into that game, it was like, okay, who is going to help Ant? Who is going to help him shoulder the load? Who's going to help offensively so that he doesn't have to do so much? And he played another 44 minutes yesterday, and it was really tough sledding for him. And I think it was like 5 of 15 from the floor. It was just really tough, because it almost felt like I was watching 2K, because it was like he would get the ball, and then sometimes 3 Nuggets gave him attention. And he was like, oh, shoot, and he had to, dribble out of it. And there was times where I felt like, because of the situation, it didn't allow him to be as aggressive, and he didn't try to be as aggressive as you normally would see him, because there was like a wall that was there for him. And, like I said, after the game, he was saying that he's never faced that type of attention before in his life. And he was like, this is helping me get in the best shape of my life. And I'm like, that's great, but I don't know that that's going to help win games, So I think that's the tough part. And this is just the evolution, I guess, of what his game is going to be like. He's going to have to be able to beat those double teams. He's going to have to be able to, make the smart decisions to get his teammates involved when they're trying to take him out of the game, to still allow, winning basketball to happen for the Wolves. And so this is, growing pains for him. But I think he'll be better because of it. Will he be better because of it in this series? As far as trying to win the series, I'm not sure. But that whole situation was tough, and I think it's building character for him on the court. But what can you do, man? Because he was clearly frustrated all night, and it just seemed to kind of take him out of it.
Yeah. Ron, your take on Ant's performance, how the Nuggets guarded him, and what you need to see from Ant in Game 6.
Yeah, so for Ant, the biggest thing for me is the second half he was hunting. And I always say that. Like, he looked like the hunter in the second half. It looked like he realized he can get in the flow. I do understand the whole like hot hand, because I think I don't know who was I wasn't paying attention to who the announcers actually were, but he called it out. Like, Ant went for the layup, got one. Then he hit like the step back, then dribble, hezzy, layup. And then he's like, oh, he's about to go for the 3 for 3. It's like, oh no, I get it. Like, the hot hand has to keep going. But he settled for a 3 that was ill-advised, in my opinion. At that point, they couldn't stop him on the drive. So get to your spot. You didn't need a 3. So I think in his, like, if he's not feeling it, and that's where Michael Jordan set himself apart from everybody else. Jordan realized, if I can just keep getting 2s and stop you on defense, we're going to come back. And I feel like today's NBA, because of Steph Curry, everybody feels like the 3 ball is the way to get back into games. Whereas Michael Jordan's era was not like that. He would go shot after shot after shot after mid-range after mid-range. And partly because he grew up in the non-3-point era. So he was like, growing up, he realized that's how you get buckets. You just go attack and shoot your best shot. Anthony Edwards, to me, even like seeking the backboard sometimes, I know he talks about that. It feels like just as good of a shot if it's not a regular shot. But he forces the backboard, I feel like, sometimes too much, versus just shoot a jumper. Like, you hit him on a turnaround, you're wide open from that deep, just shoot a jumper. He tries to shoot off the backboard. So I agree with his some of his shots, but some of his shots to me just felt forced. The other part of it, and I'm going back to this Cat Aaron Gordon thing. If you look at their playoff numbers, it's not like Cat's give you 19, Aaron Gordon's give you 15, but the biggest difference is rebounds, assists, and turnover to assist ratio. Like, Aaron Gordon is setting himself ahead of Cat, and I get it. Like, Cat's the best big man shooter in the NBA. Aaron Gordon's knocking down wide open 3s too. And so that's why, and again, with Joker, and Rudy Gobert, and that's the other part. Rudy Gobert is not Joker. We know that. So maybe that's part of Aaron Gordon's allure, is like, you have to help out down low. So my guy as a power forward is probably going to slough off and try to help. That leaves me open. Cat's guy usually can't, because they're like, if Rudy has in the post, good luck. Let's see what happens. And so, but Ant's he's gotta seek the rim a little bit more. He's gonna get the contact. They're starting to give him some of these and 1 calls. I think he's just got to keep attacking to the point where they are dictating, and they have to figure out, how do we stop him? But they just threw 2 guys at him too. I mean, I don't know if they need to space the floor out so that they can't throw 2 guys at him, and then when they do, it's easily understood who the guy is. But you might need to surround him with more shooters and less Gobert. And that might be the answer to Game 6, is you got to take Gobert off the floor probably and get an additional shooter in there, because if they're just going to, I mean, they literally showed it. They were treating him like Steph Curry. Get the ball out of his hands, make somebody else beat us. Well, if that's the case, you got to get another shooter in there, and hopefully Mike Conley's back, because I would take Slow-Mo out. I would go Naz Reid, Jaden McDaniels, Anthony Edwards, Mike Conley. And then from there, I don't know who the next guy is when that doesn't work, but I would put shooters around him. But Karl-Anthony Towns, you got to be that 5th guy. You could, all 4 of those guys can spread the floor out. I think that's the way to beat the Nuggets.
Yeah, I do think the Wolves, they stayed a little too big when Jokic was off the floor at times in this game, and I think that was an issue. It was a weird thing to have like Slow-Mo and Rudy on the floor when Jokic wasn't on the floor at times. And
slow
part of
mo
that
shouldn't
goes
be on the
back.
floor at all. Sorry.
What's that? You say
I
slow
said
mo?
slow mo shouldn't be on the floor at all. I'm sorry.
Well, and it goes back to what we were talking about before. Like, this is the personnel the Wolves have now. Like, they're not going to throw in somebody that hasn't played all year, and we can, that's a bigger conversation we can address in the offseason related to roster building. But it was also just like a week ago that we were praising the depth of the Wolves over the depth of the Nuggets. And I would say, like, the Cat versus Gordon, in my mind, it's more Cat versus Murray, right? Like the 1B stars or the second level stars. And if Cat's outplaying Murray, even though they're not the direct matchup, and then it's the other role players that need to outplay the other role players. And for the Wolves, it's like, who's that third guy? Well, it's supposed to be Rudy in terms of offensive numbers. And I guess he did score in this game ultimately, but a whole other topic we could go off on that I talked about on Wednesday's Lockdown Wolves is how much the Wolves just ignored Gobert when he was rolling to the rim. I think they could have hit him on a few more rolls, and he's a good short roller and good at kicking the ball to the corner. And I think there was just some fear that, hey, the Nuggets are so connected defensively, they're going to get hands in the passing lane. I think it was more that than like not trusting Rudy, although we've seen different phases of that over the course of the season. So, the role player thing, obviously the role players have to play better. They have to outplay Denver's role players, and that has not been the case to this point. All right, I want to shift next and talk a little bit bigger picture before we come back. I want to talk a little bit about the Tim Connelly rumors that are out there, and then I want to get back to predicting Game 6 and Game 7. That's how we'll close out the show here today. Today's episode of the Minnesota Basketball Party is brought to us by Gametime. Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA, which makes getting playoff tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to the tip-off. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. No matter what you're trying to attend, you can save up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. Whatever it is you like to attend, you can get those deals. They also have flash deals. Save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. Plus, zone deals. Save even more when you choose a section and let Gametime choose the seats. Plus, you can even get a view from your seat, a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. And their lowest price guarantee is a guarantee for Gametime, where they'll credit you 110% of the difference with their lowest price guarantee. Download the Gametime app today, create an account, and use the code LOCKDOWNNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Gametime. Again, that's the account is or the Gametime app. Create an account and use the code LOCKDOWNNBA. Terms apply. Lockdown NBA, LOCKEDON NBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, so I normally wouldn't want to stray too far away from the action that we're in the middle of with the series, but there was a significant enough report related to Tim Connelly over the last few days that I think it's worth at least giving a couple of minutes here before we close out with predictions for the rest of the series. Tim Connelly, the report was, I think it was a Shams Charania and somebody else at The Athletic reported that the Detroit Pistons were interested in Tim Connelly as one of the candidates for their lead basketball ops job. Shouldn't be a surprise, but there's also this layer that Tim Connelly has reportedly as an opt-out this summer. He could leave. And then I think normally this would be a complete nothing burger, but we have to consider because the ownership stuff and the fact that the Pistons, and if Connelly does truly have an opt-out, the Pistons could make him even more of a Godfather offer than the Wolves did when they lured him to Minnesota. We don't, there's a lot we don't know about this situation, but just given what we know about the Wolves and given what we know about the Pistons, and does the playoff outcome have anything to do with what happens here this summer? I just want to hear what everybody thinks about this. Again, like this is we're just kind of prognosticating based on what we know. But Ron, what's your take on the possibility of Tim Connelly? Like, should he even be looking at this Pistons job? Is there enough upside there with Cade Cunningham, et cetera, that this would even be worth his while just to get out of the ownership situation in Minnesota?
So this is the thing. There's some internal stuff that I've heard with this ownership issue of money, long-term success of this team, and then, the thoughts of some of the luxury tax stuff where they were saying they wanted to cut salaries and get rid of maybe a guy like Karl-Anthony Towns and bring in Aaron Gordon. So when you think about all of that, when you think about all the potential for Tim Connelly, if he thinks the way it's set, it needs to be set for the next couple of years and these owners need to suck it up and pay this money, or if he's like, you know what, I can go, maybe tank for somebody. And that's the thing about the NBA. The next couple of years, like, who are you tanking for? There's no LeBron James showing up There's no more Wimbies as of right now. So going to the Pistons, does that give you, is there anything the Pistons have other than Jaden Ivey, Cade Cunningham, that for him, he could say, all right, I know I can go get X, Y, and Z, and then I can build this team up. Unless LeBron James, and they're going to draft Bronny to the Pistons, and LeBron's going to just follow Bronny to the Pistons. I don't know why Tim Connelly would go to Detroit. I think there's other opportunities, but at the end of the day, if you're going to pay me way more money than I'm already getting, sure, I will go to Detroit and work with the Pistons and just do that for a couple of years because I can set my family up for life. So I don't know if it's going to happen, but I wouldn't leave if I were him.
Jack, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think money is the only thing that could do this. I mean, it would be financially irresponsible for Tim Connelly to not opt out of this deal. I think that he can use the ongoing ownership saga here as leverage to get a better contract. Certainly, you cannot blame someone for doing what's best for them and their family. And I mean, you kind of put Glenn Taylor in a bind here, and that you want to posture as if these other guys don't have the money, and then it becomes an awfully tough look for you if Tim Connelly is presented an offer of 12, 15 million, whatever it is, and he's built this team into what it is that has made you have seller's remorse and not want to give up the team, to then turn around and say, oh no, actually, we're good. You go ahead to Detroit. I think would just be an awfully bad look for him. So I certainly would expect Tim Connelly to stick around. I don't get the sense that he's dying to leave, especially to be able to build a team around Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels, Naz Reid, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, all these young guys. And then also, hey, you have two all-stars in Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert. It's a pretty darn good situation, and there's not a whole lot of good going on in Detroit right now. So other than the money, I just don't see any conceivable reason why he would leave.
Yeah, Jack, you bring up a good point about the opt out, that like there's leverage there, right? And so I think the way you put it is really smart, that it'd be financially irresponsible for him not to opt out. So when we see the headline, at some point this summer that Tim Connelly has opted out, that is very likely, if nothing else, it's a leverage tool, right? And if he does indeed get interest, like we see this all the time with, college coaches, allegedly getting interest from other schools because they want to renegotiate their contract. And I say allegedly, I'm sure a lot of the time it is true. I'm sure there was a phone call or an email or whatever. And that's what this could look like, is like Tim Connelly making himself a free agent to then, in a sense, call the bluff of ownership, get himself a new deal in Minnesota, or maybe there is some legitimate, conversation that happens with the Pistons that can kind of drive that. Reggie, any thoughts on the idea of becoming the president of basketball operations for the Detroit Pistons?
Yeah, so Jack mentioned the money, and I agree with him there. I also take it a step further. I think it's the money in terms of the team. I came here to Denver. I've been here twice now in the series, and I saw Stan Kroenke yesterday. Walked right past him in the hallway, and I'll reserve I'm a old school St. Louis Rams fan, so I think that Stan is a sleazeball. So I'll just leave it there. But what I will say is Tim Connelly came from a situation where he had an owner who was flush, like flush. I mean, we know Stan is a real estate tycoon, all that, but he's also married to the heiress of Walmart. Like, there's no shortage of money where he's concerned. He literally bought the amusement park right next to Ball Arena. And what I heard is that there are plans for him to make the amusement park move elsewhere so that he can make that into like a Nuggets headquarters, which is crazy. A whole amusement park. He built a 2-story condo on top of Ball Arena. Like, that's what Tim Connelly is used to. Like, he was there for 10 years helping to build that. And now he comes to a situation in Minnesota where after only a couple years, now the ownership is having a squabble. Like, they're squabbling. Shout out to Uncle Jerome from Snowfall. But, like, they're squabbling. And now it's like, well, is the team going to commit long term to doing what needs to be done to build a championship contender on a yearly basis? Or are they really going to slash some payroll? I mean, the articles that we've seen, Glenn Taylor, guys like Tim Connelly don't come here. But now you have him. Are you going to do what it takes to retain him? I think that's a really important question to be asked here. And I think Tim Connelly would. I mean, the Pistons were awful last year, and they got the number 5 pick in the lottery. Like, good Lord, like they have no favor from the NBA right now. And so I do think that Tim Connelly is a great builder of franchises from a roster standpoint. But man, that Detroit situation, yeah, it's going to take a lot of money to pry him away from Minnesota, but also it may be made easier if Minnesota just doesn't have the type of plan moving forward that would make him want to stay, coming from a place like Denver where there's just cash everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I like we've said, I wouldn't be shocked at all if he opts out. It's just a matter of, and here's the thing, like, I mean, I guess if you opt out now and the money's there, then the money's there now, but there will always be other jobs. And I'm sure there's also an ego thing here too. You have to have an ego to be in a role like this so I'm not saying this in a bad way, but like, everybody's already praising him for building 2 of the best 3 teams in the NBA. And, he probably wants, there's probably part of him that would want to see this thing through with the Wolves and prove that he can ultimately win to some degree, whether it's get to the finals or win a championship with the Wolves. I know Denver won after he left, but he built them into that team that was already a contender. So there could be some element to that where like, hey, I'm going to stick around and do this for a while longer. And then there's always going to be other opportunities down the road. And who knows what other factors could play into that. All right, let's close this out. Let's do about 60 seconds each or so on, pick for game 6. And if it's a Wolves win, what does game 7 would be Sunday. So by the next time we have another basketball party, this series is going to be over one way or the other. So your picks for game 6 and possibly game 7. And Reggie, we'll start with you.
Okay, so this is tough. Being in the arena last night, it just felt like the Nuggets are downhill. And like I said, I know that the Wolves are saying the right things, but I just don't know if they have it. And it's kind of like inconceivable to believe that they won the first 2 in the way that they did and then end up losing 4 straight. But I think that's kind of what happens here. I think the Nuggets take care of business in game 6 in Minnesota, and it's just a disappointing end to a promising start to the postseason.
Ron.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. The way they've just shown they are a better team. They are showing why they're the previous champion. They're looking at a chance to repeat. I don't see too many other teams the way they're playing right now, and they're healthy, giving them any, like Jamal Murray seems like his calf is better now, or at least good enough to do what he's doing. I don't see too many other teams. Like Chet Holmgren has no answer for Jokic besides length. But I don't think that's gonna, like, he's gonna walk him into the basket if that's the next matchup. And same with the Mavs. I just don't think the Mavs have any answer for him either. He's literally unstoppable the way the refs let him just bang into people and throw his body weight around. So yeah, I think it's over in 6.
Jack, game 6 prediction.
Yeah, I struggle to see how the Wolves win this one. The 2 teams are just trending in complete opposite directions. The Nuggets are completely rolling, and Mike Conley with an Achilles injury on the last play of the game. You hate to see it. And Karl Anthony Towns too banged his left meniscus in a really awkward way and was clearly favoring it walking off the floor last night. You think about 48-hour turnaround. I just don't know that that's enough time for the Wolves to try to come up with meaningful solutions to the problems that the Nuggets offense is presenting them. So, and Ant is gassed. So, if they win game 6, they deserve all the credit in the world. But yeah, I struggle to see the Nuggets not closing it out here.
And Ben, real quick, if the Wolves do have a chance, like Karl Anthony Towns kind of has to, if the knee is going to allow him to play, like, there were times where he was on KCP and like he's fading away and that's barbecue chicken all day. Like, take him to the rack and take it to the cup. Like there were several times where they put KCP on Cat, and Cat did not do what he needed to do. He's fading away, or he's settling for jumpers when there's a clear mismatch there. That just can't happen in Game 6.
Basketball IQ. Cat lacks it at certain moments in games. I don't know why. So weird.
Yeah, it did. It's funny. Like Jack and I talked a little bit on the postcast about how Cat isn't shooting enough threes in the playoffs, but I would also agree that there are moments where he has that mismatch and he's not. I mean, basketball IQ, sure, yeah, like just knowing when to pick your spots. And it's weird because sometimes I feel like I feel like he's making improvements with that. But if you look at his shot chart, there were a lot of he only shot like 3 mid-range jumpers in this game, but it felt like a couple of those 3-pointers were rushed. They weren't in rhythm. He had a couple of weird, shots kind of in the paint where he could have gotten deeper, closer to the basket. He hasn't been committing offensive fouls in the series like we've seen him do in the past. So I do think, he's leaving some stuff on the floor with not taking advantage of these mismatches. And also the Wolves as a team just aren't shooting enough 3-pointers in general, which I think those two are related because it comes back to shot selection. This is a team that didn't shoot mid-range jumpers during the regular season. I feel like that's happened a little bit too much in this series.
When you watch,
go ahead, Ron.
No, I'm saying when you watch the Nuggets, if Cat, and Reggie's right, if Cat understands who's behind him in that moment, that's the old term everybody should say, mouse in the house. Barkley would say it. Like if Shaq got a little guy, mouse in the house, give me the ball now. Just give it to me. If they help, now you're wide open. And that's what the Nuggets do a great job of. Aaron Gordon, he recognizes who's covering him right away. And then he's like, I'm going to take you. If you help, I'm kicking it to somebody else. We're going to make the secondary pass, the third pass, and then that guy's wide open. That's where the Timberwolves struggle. When it gets to Cat, guys' feet end up in concrete sometimes, and they're just staring, watching, saying, like, is Cat going to take him? What's Cat going to do? Cat needs to just keep dribbling backwards until they help. If they never help, just do what Joker does. Just keep dribbling backwards until you're under the rim and then lay it up. And he doesn't do that.
Yeah, I mean, Carl was getting doubled every single time he touched the ball in the post last night. But I think Carl's played like the basketball IQ for sure. When it's juxtaposed with Jokic, every single possession, just forcing the defense to stop him doing the same thing over and over and over and over again until the defense stops it. And the defense can't. I think that it makes what Cat is doing look so much worse. Because he's doing what you want Carl to be doing, and Carl just can't do it. So it's tough, but it does feel like if the Wolves are going to win Game 6, it has to be because Carl goes for 25, 30 points. Yeah.
I mean, he's got there were moments that were positive from Cat in Game 5, but as a team, like you wouldn't point to anybody and say, hey, that, this player had a really strong game outside, really nobody. Yeah. I mean, so yes, they need, we came into this game saying they need contributions outside of Anthony Edwards, and they didn't, including Ant. Nobody really contributed offensively in this game. It was just a disjointed game. So they're going to need Ant to be huge, and they're going to need a secondary scorer, which hopefully is Karl Anthony Towns if they're going to win Game 6. My pick, I was expecting a little bit more optimism. My pick is that it's going to be a really close game. I was going to say I think they lose a close game. We haven't gotten a really close, fun crunch time game in this series yet. Weirdly enough, as fun as it's been and as good as both these teams are, I think we get it in Game 6. I don't feel super positive. We talked about Ant being gassed. I think that's true. Only one day of rest in between, which maybe hurts Jamal Murray as well, and that can kind of balance out. I think it's a really close game. My pick would be the Wolves lose, but it's pretty much a coin toss. I believe the FanDuel line is at least it opened at Wolves -2.5. So either way, close game, and hopefully we're talking next week about a Game 7 on Sunday. We do this every Wednesday, the Minnesota Basketball Party, usually hosted by Sam Ekstrom, with the four of us as the panelists. So we'll be back next Wednesday at about 9 a.m. Central to talk Wolves, hopefully winning in 7 over the Nuggets. But either way, we'll be back next week. Big thank you for listening. Big thank you for watching this morning. We'll catch you next week.